Okay. So in last class, we were talking about the theory of classical evolutionism. The basic idea which suggested that every culture will pass through stages in a unilinear fashion. And these stages are savagery, barbarism, and civilization. Okay. So they suggested that the one reason that is responsible for this is psychic unity of mankind. People think similarly in same situation. Okay. And the proof that they gave was survival. So this is the crux of this theory. Okay. Now we were supposed to read the scholars who are associated with this school or theory. First one, E B Tylor. I'm writing the dates, but you're not supposed to remember it. Okay, I'm just writing the date so that I can contextualize at what time such kind of ideas were actually prevailing. तो आपको एक chronological order मिल जाएगा that when, at what time in 18th century, 19th century, 20th century, some particular kind of ideas were prevalent. And that will also help you understand better anthropology and also several other political events that were going on at that point of time. Okay, and how these were connected. So for example, colonization was going on and how colonization is related to such kind of theories. Okay, we'll discuss it in a few minutes today itself. So this scholar E B Tylor, he is said to be the founding father of anthropology, or British anthropology specifically. And he created a name for anthropology so much so that anthropology at one point of time was called as Tylor's science. Okay, so you must have heard about a person named Max Muller. India mein aaye the, Asiatic Society of Bengal. He used to be a part of that and he translated Indian Vedas into English. Okay, so he was a scholar of Sanskrit and he was a contemporary of E B Tylor and he used to call anthropology as Tylor's science. That was the kind of influence that he had. And his story is very interesting, kind of thodi filmy type ki story hai. So I'll tell you what actually happened. That he belongs to a minority group called as Quakers. So it's more like a sect among Christians. Okay, and they were not Catholics. So Quaker community, they were usually the middle class sections of Britain. So belonging to Quaker community, his education was going in Quaker schools or schools run by their community only. And then when he wanted to go for graduation in Oxford. And what happened? When he went to Oxford, he was denied admission, saying that Oxford gives admission only and only to Catholic Christians. Belonging to Quaker community, he was rejected admission. And due to this, because of the religious discrimination that he faced, he developed a sense of agnostic attitude or agnosticism against religion. Agnosticism मतलब क्या होता है? थोड़ा सा कि ये कोई God-made entity नहीं हो सकती. It is something, an intellectual creation. And you will find what he said about religion later on in few minutes that will display the agnostic attitude that he developed against religion just because of the religious discrimination that he faced while going for admission in Oxford. So what he did, when he was denied admission in Oxford, he actually started helping his father in a business that his father was owning, that is foundry business or something metal related business was there. And in his early 20s, somewhere 22, 23 ke aspas, he started to develop symptoms of TB, tuberculosis. And coming from a very well-off family, he decided that I'll be going to warmer latitude just to regain my health or recover my health. And he decided to go to Cuba. And when he went to Cuba, he met a person named Henry Christie. This Henry Christie was a British businessman and a kind of an archaeologist. So उस समय जो archaeologists थे, that was not that organized archaeologists. They were mainly treasure hunters. Archaeology के नाम पे treasure hunting चलती थी कि जाएंगे, कुछ मेटल कुछ पॉट्स मिल जाएंगे जिसमें शायद गोल्ड कॉइन्स हो, कुछ एंटीक मिल जाए दैट विल बी हैविंग ए ग्रेटर वैल्यू इन द मार्केट, and that was the kind of treasure hunting that these businessmen used to do. So he was a kind of an avid archaeologist, or say some kind of nascent archaeologist. He met him, and both of them they decided that we'll be going to Mexico for archaeological excavations. So he made a plan with Henry Christie, and along with Henry Christie, he planned a trip of 4 months to Mexico. Now you can easily understand कि ये कितना वेल ऑफ रहा होगा कि तबीयत खराब होने से ब्रिटेन से क्यूबा जा रहा है, एंड क्यूबा में बैठे बैठे इसने 4 महीने मेक्सिको का प्लान बना लिया. ओके, सो दैट वाज द काइंड ऑफ say you can say extravagant a person E B Tylor was. Went to Mexico, and in this Mexico, what he observed, he was initially observing a lot of Mexican tribes, and these tribes, they had a lot of very similarity with respect to what Tylor had read in the missionaries' account, or say in the accounts of the travelers about the tribes living in different parts of the world. He found that they were also behaving more or less similarly, and the kind of tools that they were using, the kind of behaviors that they had, they were also very similar. And that always kind of provoked him. How can this be so similar? How can the tribe living far away in Mexico is similar to the tribe living in Africa or Australia? What was the reason? Another thing that he found, that there was a lot of protest that Mexican people were doing in their country. And he blamed the priest and the missionaries for them. अब ये एक reason क्या है? Agnosticism against religion. And why he blamed priests and missionaries? Because these priests and missionaries, they were trying to convert these tribes into Christianity. Okay, and there was a kind of protest that was going on. So whatever he observed in Mexico, he wrote a travelogue with the name Anahuac, or the Mexico and the Mexicans. And this travelogue was actually a record of whatever he has experienced in Mexico. Okay, now what happened? Please, किसी को बाहर से बुलाना. Please call somebody from outside. Okay. Now, that thought of similarity between the Mexican tribes and the tribes living in Africa and Australia, that always used to kind of provoke him कि ऐसे इतनी similarity कैसे हो सकती है. And what happened? When he went back from Mexico, he started to study multiple missionary accounts, multiple other travelogues in which the description of communities living in different parts of the world have been given. And based on this study, he wrote a book. Research into Early History of Mankind and Development of Civilization. This is the name of the book. He was comparing multiple tribals all across the world and the similarities. And he was thinking, how can they be similar? So in the book, he reasoned out there can be two possible reasons. One is that they both independently invented the same kind of features, cultural features, technological features. Independent invention हुआ होगा. और दूसरा, they might have copied from each other. Okay, there might have been movement, and that's why they might have copied from each other. There can be two possibilities if we two are similar. Either we have both independently invented the same thing, or it is that one has learned from the other. He says that the second possibility is not possible or not viable because people living far away in Australia cannot travel to Mexico, and there is no means of transport or communication between people situated very far away from each other. And based on that, he suggested that only possibility is parallel inventions. Okay, and that was something again intrigued him कि parallel invention कैसे हो सकते हैं. And in order to explore this, he again wrote a book called as Primitive Culture, which is called as the magnum opus, or one of the very classical literature of uh, beginning of anthropology. Say in the initial phase of anthropology, this book, you can say, marks the official beginning of modern anthro, Primitive Culture. Okay. Now, what does this book suggest? So in this book, he begins in the beginning lines. I have read this book. ये हम लोग को masters वगैरह में ये book classic literature में एक suggest की जाती है. So some part of that book is basically given to us to read. Now in the beginning of this book, the beginning lines, he gave what is called as a anthropological definition of the term that we have been using, but we do not know how to define culture. We have been using this term culture, society and all, but what exactly is culture? How to anthropologically define culture? He gave one of the most comprehensive definition of culture in this book. And the definition is culture the complex whole consisting of knowledge, belief, art, moral, laws, and customs. Moral laws, customs, and any other capabilities acquired by a man as member of society. So this was the definition. A complex whole. That means a collection of several elements. Whole. You cannot just pick it one, but a whole that consists of some knowledge that you have, some belief system that you have, the art that you follow, morals, the laws that you follow, some customs, or anything that you have learned being a member of society. That means you're not born with the culture. You learn your culture. You are learning the culture as you live among the societal members. Okay, it's a learned trait. So this definition initially might look a little more complicated, but you can remember it. Complex whole consisting of KBC. आप लोगों ने देखा होगा सबने, कौन बनेगा करोड़पति और उसमें क्या जीतते हैं? Money, mal. Okay. So knowledge, belief, customs, moral, art and law that you learn as a member of society. That's it. Okay. So this is the culture that he defines. And one thing that is very important here is the term whole. Whole means that they are interconnected with respect to each other. They cannot be studied alone. आप ये सबका linked है, and that is the collective whole that is put into your mind. So एक तरीके से you can understand this culture is more like a software. Okay, and society is more like a hardware. Society is nothing but a group of people with shared culture. And culture is a software through which that society runs. आप एक society में रह रहे हो, so you have to follow certain kind of norms. Else you will be expelled from that society, isn't it? So that norms that you follow while living in the society, while being a member of that society, that is the culture. So members having shared culture will create a society together. Okay. So simply, culture is like a software. अब आपकी body है, it's that is the hardware, and उसमें software डाल दिया, and the hardware starts behaving in a particular manner. So hardware can be a computer है, उसमें आपने MS-DOS डाला, या आपने विंडोज डाल दिया या उसमें मैकिंटोश डाल दिया या यूनिक्स लाइनेक्स, कौन सा सॉफ्टवेयर डाल रहे हो, ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम, दैट इज हाउ द कंप्यूटर विल बिहेव। इन द सेम वे द माई बॉडी इज देयर, एंड उस बॉडी के ब्रेन में एक ब्लैंक है, एंड जो भी सॉफ्टवेयर आप पुट इन करोगे उस तरीके से वो बिहेव करेगा। तो अगर आप बच्चा किसी इस्लामिक फैमिली में पैदा होता है तो देन दैट काइंड ऑफ सॉफ्टवेयर इज एक्चुअली पुट इनटू द ब्रेन। हिंदू फैमिली में पैदा होता है तो दैट काइंड ऑफ सॉफ्टवेयर इज पुट इनटू द ब्रेन, एंड करस्पॉन्डिंगली देयर इज अ बिहेवियर। आर यू गेटिंग दिस आइडिया? So this is what he defines as culture. Now, in this book, he decides to reconstruct the history of culture, because he was believer in evolutionism. So he wanted to trace the path of development of the culture or reconstruct the history of culture. And how to do it? He based his study on three major methods. First one is the idea of what is called as uniformitarianism. Now, this is a geological concept that was given by a geologist, Charles Lyell. Uniformitarianism. Now, in order to understand this concept, you have to first understand the context in which this concept was given. Now, this concept is against the biblical thoughts. That is, Bible में अर्थ को कंस्ट्रक्शन को लेके एक आइडिया था, that is called as catastrophism. Okay. Now, what is this catastrophism? Bible says that Earth is creation of a series of catastrophes. Catastrophes means some major natural disasters. Okay. So आप लोगों ने कई बार सुना होगा Noah's flood, or not Noah's flood, if you must have heard this term D-Day. Okay. So that is a biblical term only. That is doomsday, the biblical term in which a big natural disaster will happen and all the existing species that is there on the earth will get eliminated and a new set of species will be created by God. That is what Bible believed in. So earth has been created by some major catastrophes, and humans are the product of the last catastrophe. And that's why the most evolved or most intelligent, the best creation of God. That is what Bible said. Now, this Charles Lyell suggested that Earth cannot be created in such a short period. He suggested that Earth is a result of process which are gradually happening. And Earth is subjected to multiple forces which has been acting upon it for millions of years, which has actually shaped the Earth or Earth physical features of Earth. And these forces are the force of gravity, erosion, tectonic plate movements, and which are happening very gradually. And that's how the features of Earth has been created uniformly over millions of years of time. Okay, and that is what is called as uniformitarianism. So processes that are observed today, erosion आज भी हो रहा है, tectonic plate movement आज भी हो रही है, gravity आज भी act कर रही है, and this is gradually changing the features of the Earth. Similarly, these features or forces were acting thousands, millions of years ago also, and that is what has shaped the Earth today. So processes that are happening today used to exist in the past, and the Earth actually behaved in a similar manner to these processes as it is behaving now. Okay, and that is what has changed the Earth. This is the idea of uniformitarianism. अब इस आइडिया को टाइलर ने एंथ्रोपोलॉजी में बोरो कर लिया. कैसे? उसने बोला कि the same thing that you are saying about Earth is also true about human brain. Human brain is regulated by similar kind of forces, or there is a regular pattern of cognition or thinking. Cognition means thinking. So a regular pattern of cognition, and that means आज जो फोर्सेस एक्ट कर रहे हैं ब्रेन पे, एक तरीके का सोचने का जो तरीका है ब्रेन का, वो पहले भी वैसा ही था, हमेशा से वैसा ही था। ब्रेन को डिजाइन ही इस तरीके से किया गया दैट इट विल थिंक इन ए पर्टिकुलर मैनर ओनली। जैसे कि अर्थ पे ग्रेविटी का फोर्स लगेगा तो इट विल बिहेव इन ए पर्टिकुलर मैनर, सेम वे brain is also designed in such a manner that any particular external stimuli will make it behave in a particular manner. That is, a regular pattern of cognition is there. And that is why whenever human brain comes across a particular kind of problem, it will give a particular kind of solution only. And this is through the idea of uniformitarianism. He justified the idea of psychic unity of mankind, which he suggested will lead to what is called as independent inventions across different cultures. अलग अलग जगह पे होंगे, लेकिन जब भी उनको कोई प्रॉब्लम आएगी, क्योंकि ब्रेन एक ही जैसा सोच सकता है, it will always come up with similar kind of solution, and that is what is psychic unity of mankind. Clear है ये? Is it clear to everyone how he came across uniformitarianism and used it to justify psychic unity of mankind? Yes, no, kuch to bolo. Okay. Then he suggested that the psychic unity of mankind and the parallel inventions, the similarities are visible. किस तरीके से आप विजिबल कर सकते हो, कैसे आप देखोगे कि सिमिलर कल्चर्स हैं? He says that कि it is visible more in technological realm. आपको सिमिलैरिटी टेक्नोलॉजी में बहुत ज्यादा मिलेगी. You will see people separated away from each other, say for thousands of kilometers, lakhs of kilometers, and yet having similar kind of stone tools, yet having similar kind of tools, technologies, or pattern of say cultivating crops, fishing, and so on so forth. जैसे आप देखोगे एक कॉमन टूल टेक्नोलॉजी में आपको बोलूंगा bow and arrow. Now this bow and arrow is found across hunter-gatherers spread all over the world. Now, have they borrowed from each other or they derived it? अगर उन्होंने खुद से बनाया है, तो then it justifies psychic unity of mankind कि वो लकड़ी मतलब जंगलों में रहते थे, they had resource का access and that's why they created bow and arrow by their own brain. Okay, independent inventions. Or similar kind of spears, similar kind of stone tools have been found, and based on which we have classified the Paleolithic age into lower, middle, and upper Paleolithic. कि एक ही तरीके के टूल्स मिल रहे हैं और उसके बेसिस पे हमने बोल दिया कि लोअर पेलिथिक कल्चर है या फिर मिडिल पेलिथिक कल्चर है या नियोलिथिक है या चाल्कोलिथिक है. सो डिफरेंट पार्ट्स ऑफ द वर्ल्ड चाल्कोलिथिक कल्चर मिला है एंड हर जगह एक ही जैसे टूल्स मिल रहे हैं, isn't it? So based on which he suggested that technological realm will be easy to demonstrate the similarity of the culture. Okay. Second feature that he suggested can be used to reconstruct the history of culture is survivals. What happened that Mexico ke baad he went to America, okay, North America, for some days, and what he observed while he was roaming in the American market, that there was in the main market there was a shop in which the name of the shop was Ye Old Day Coffee Parlor. He was actually pronouncing it like this. Ye Old Day Coffee Parlor. People also used to pronounce it like this. And similarly, a similar kind of term Ye Old Day Pizza Parlor. Now he was very confused that people speaking English and what is this word Ye Old Pizza Parlor or Ye Old Coffee Parlor. He actually started to read the archaic English or say pre-modern English, and in that pre-modern English or Latin English, this word or this consonant ye, y, was actually pronounced as okay. So it was pronounced as the. And now if you read it, what it is written? The old coffee parlor. Okay. Actually, this coffee parlor was very old and the name was put up in Latin English. But धीरे धीरे वो English तो change हो गई. And people started using the old coffee, the word the was used. लेकिन ये तो survival हो गया. पुरानी भाषा के कुछ अंश इसमें रह गए. But it is again a proof that the modern English has actually originated from the older one. And there are traces of the older form in the modern English as well. And which people are following because of habit, force of habit, having no contemporary relevance. Similarly, he found in America for the very first time celebration of, you must have heard about this term, Halloween. It's a very famous festival, abhi bhi aisa hota hai. And people usually dress up in the form of vampires, okay, cannibalistic people or the bloodsuckers, witches and all. Such kind of dressings is basically worn by the children, worn by the people. Now, why Halloween? He was actually not able to understand whether people believed in witches, spirits, souls who used to kill, who used to suck the blood. ऐसा तो वहां पे नहीं था. The society was modern. They were not believing in all this. So why a festival like Halloween? So he suggested that it is a survival because it is a reflection of the society coming from that kind of society wherein they used to believe in spirits and souls or the deadly spirits and souls. And that's why on every year they used to organize a feast in which they will be placating those spirits. उन spirits को basically कुछ feast offer करते हैं so that they do not harm them. हर साल ऐसा किया जाता था. अब वो society तो evolve हो गई है. They do not believe in spirits and soul. But yet, the traces of the previous culture are still remnant there. And that is again a proof that yes, the new society has evolved from the older one with some traces left. And this, he suggested that, are the proofs of society evolving. Okay. The third thing that he actually suggested can be used to reconstruct the history of culture is comparative method. And that together will actually create, or that will compile whatever Tylor had to say about evolutionism. कि comparative method क्या है? Or how you can actually say that the evolution has actually occurred. So in comparative method, he suggested that the cultures can be compared with respect to each other, and based on their technological knowledge, they can be ranked with respect to each other on the sequence of progression. तो आपका कल्चर मेरे कल्चर से कंपेयर किया जाएगा, या culture of Americans will be compared with the culture of Africans, and with respect to Asians or Indians or Chinese and Japanese. And based on the technological progress that they have made, a respective rank would be given to them. ठीक है? तो जिसकी technological progress सबसे ज्यादा है, that will be equating the rank of civilization. उससे थोड़ा कम will be barbaric, and उससे और कम will be savagery. So based on mastery of technological expertise, the relative rank can be given. And he says that the proof of this comparative method can be seen in museums also. You go to the museums in which various artifacts can be found, stone tools, metal tools, and so on and so forth. And you can easily understand the progression in which the technological growth has always occurred. He says that acquaintance or familiarity with physical laws or natural laws of sciences is maximum in case of civilization, mean in case of barbaric society, and lowest in case of savagery society. मतलब आपको जो western sciences हैं, he says that सबसे ज्यादा civilization वाले जानते हैं, उससे थोड़े कम barbaric people, and उस सबसे कम will be savagery. So more the knowledge of western sciences, laws of nature, physics के laws, more is the technological progress. And again, he is making a statement that Western science is the real science. That means he is just calling that physics, chemistry, maths, and that was developing in Europe in the post-medieval era as the Western science. And he's saying that that is the most realistic science. And other than that, any other science that any other society that believes in is merely a superstition. वो सिर्फ और सिर्फ एक मनगढ़ंत belief hai. It is nothing more than that. That is what he used to say. And he says, with more knowledge, what will happen? The ability to organize the society will increase, and that will be increased to promote goodness, power, and happiness of mankind. जितनी जितनी knowledge आती जाएगी, उससे हम लोग basically उस knowledge को use करेंगे for what? To promote our goodness, to promote our happiness, and to bring more power. Now, what is goodness, happiness, and power in such case? That we do not have to worry for day-to-day life. Like hunter-gatherers, we do not have to worry कि आज का खाना कैसे आएगा, कल का खाना कैसे आएगा for everyday meal. We are not thinking about it. In fact, any person in this world right now does not think how the world is going to eat the next day. Isn't it? So, because of we producing surplus through agriculture, and that's why next day meal is not the concern of majority of the population living on earth right now, which used to be the concern of everyone, maybe if we move just 10,000 years back or 8,000 years back. So this is what he's saying, that is the power that we have, the control over our life that will happen once we actually get accustomed to more knowledge, more power, more physical laws or natural laws or scientific laws. और हम ऐसी टेक्नोलॉजी बनाएंगे that we will be progressing. And based on that, he suggested that जिसके पास, जिस सोसाइटी के पास ये knowledge सबसे कम है, that will be savagery. The one which has mean amount of knowledge will be barbaric, and the one with the maximum amount of knowledge will be in the civilization. Now, यहाँ पे are you noting some kind of strange behavior? कुछ भी ऐसा आपको लग रहा है कि कुछ थोड़ा सा यार ये समझ भी नहीं आ रहा क्या, ये बात मतलब थोड़ी सी मीन लग रही है. Western science. He was actually saying that since you can see that Europe was the center where multiple inventions were actually and discoveries were actually happening, and you can see that is the year from 1500 approximately 1500 AD to 1900 has been the age of discoveries and invention in Europe. Multiple technologies that you talk about, they were discovered in this 400 years only. The art of navigation, shipbuilding, steam engine, or say telephone and XYZ, whatever we actually are, the essential infrastructure that we rely upon right now, they were discovered or they were actually scaled up in this 400 years only, 1500 to 1900. And the center for these inventions was none other than Europe. Majority of the scientists, or almost every scientist, was from Europe. अमेरिका भी वहां पे कहीं पार्टिसिपेट नहीं कर रहा था, और अगर अमेरिका करे भी तो अमेरिका में जो आज हम जिनको अमेरिकन्स मानते हैं, that is white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, they all are Europeans, because the original Americans, they are native Indians. Okay, and they basically have been marginalized, and America was colonized by the Britishers, who stayed back. तो अमेरिका को अभी भी कोई इंडिपेंडेंस नहीं मिली है, because true independence for America means the native Indians get the authority to rule over America. But वो तो ऐसा नहीं है. Whites went there, some of the whites settled there, and now they are ruling America. जिनके roots, they are Europeans. Okay, so that is most of the inventions and discoveries that happened in the last 400 years, and that is what he's saying as Western science. Yes. नहीं, लेकिन कहीं ना कहीं हमारे दिमाग में भी तो यही है. When we go to village and we see people using cow dung as a source of fuel to cook food and all, we believe that these people are backward. And when we go to jungles and tribal areas, when we see that they are living in huts without AC, without coolers and all, we believe that they are definitely backward. Yes, that is the word I wanted to hear, a bias. Whatever he is saying is a kind of reflection of some kind of bias in which he is considering his own society at the top and rating other societies inferior to his own society. That bias is something that is reflecting. So we'll talk about it in the criticism, but abhi ke liye, this is the three methods that he suggested can be used to reconstruct the history of a culture. The first one being uniformitarianism, which can be used to justify psychic unity of mankind. The second being survivals, which is the proof of evolution. And the third being comparative method, in which the cultures can be compared and relatively ranked with respect to each other based on the technological accomplishment that they have made. Okay. And that is what he wrote in Primitive Culture, the book Primitive Culture. And that got him all the recognition. And इसी book को पढ़ने के बाद मैक्स म्यूलर ने बोला कि anthropology is nothing but Tyler science. Now I told you इनकी story बड़ी फिल्मी है. फिल्मी कैसे है? That he was rejected from Oxford University for admission based on his religious belief system. He was a Quaker minority को belong करते थे. He was not a Catholic Christian, but he was made the first professor of anthropology or the head of anthropological department in the first head only, as soon as Oxford University opened that department. So he was the one who was a pioneer of anthropology in the Oxford University itself. So this bande ko admission nahi mila as a student. He went there as the head of the department as a professor. So that is how the fate takes the turn. So that's why the filmy story. Okay. Now, in the same book, he talks about evolution of religion. How religion actually was created and how actually it evolved. So, yahan pe, he talks about primitive people. And he says that primitive people mind is in such a way that it cannot think abstractly. थोड़े से philosophical words आएंगे, but I'll make it simple. आप बस ध्यान से सुनो. The inability to think abstract. Abstract का मतलब क्या होता है? That is able to imagine something which is not present in the immediate environment. जैसे कि हम अभी, can you think about the butter chicken that you ate last night or some other day? Or some particular favorite dish that you might have eaten 2 days, 3 days back, and talk about it. 2 days back, I was eating so and so dish. It was so and so in color and texture, and it was so and so in flavor. Or maybe you might be able to think about that I'll become an IS officer, and I'll have a white ambassador with a red headlight or something, siren, and so on and so forth. That is not immediately happening around you, but you can still think about it and talk about it, isn't it? But he says that primitive people, that people living thousands of years back, they did not have this power to think about something that is not present in the immediate environment. The similar thing is, he is just comparing them with animals. जैसे कि जानवर भी बात करते हैं कि मान लो कि एक बंदर है, अब उसके आसपास कोई थ्रेट आ रहा है, तो it can actually make sound to inform his partners about the threat. But can he talk about the threat that he experienced 3 days back? कि 3 दिन पहले भी तो वो threat आया था. Not possible. And that is what he is saying, that abstract thinking was absent in primitive people. So they were living in the immediate environment, communicating about the immediate environment only. Okay. Now what happens, that due to this inability to think abstract, they were not able to reason out a lot of things. The ability to reason out was very limited. And एक सबसे बड़ी problem उनके दिमाग में आई, that how to interpret dreams. सोते थे, सपने आते थे, सबको सपने आते होंगे. And how to interpret these dreams. And he says that he created an hypothesis that people were actually imagining the people who have become dead. in their dreams. So people who are dead are coming in the dreams of the people. And they were actually speculating about these dreams, what they were imagining. क्योंकि वो लोग तो मर गए, but फिर भी सपने में आ रहे हैं. How to reason it out? So he says that there were some kind of savage philosophers who actually reasoned out कि ये dreams क्या होते हैं. And the reason that they came up with is the dual existence of humans. Dual existence of humans means that is, there are two parts of human, every human. One is a physical visible body, and the second is a psychic invisible soul. एक body है जो दिखती है, और दूसरा part है psychic invisible soul. And these philosophers said that this soul which is invisible can leave the body, and this soul actually can travel into your dreams and hence become visible to you. तो आपकी body में what is coming is not, sorry, आपके dreams में what is coming is the soul of the dead persons, which actually stays around you even after their death. Their body might be disposed, but the soul actually stays around you. And the soul travels to your mind. But there was another thing in the dream. The dream, the second factor that was coming in the dream was not just the humans, but a dog, or even the trees, or even the log of wood was also coming into the dreams. So that made this savage philosopher say that every object in this earth has dual existence. One is the physical visible body, and second is a psychic invisible soul. Sabke soul hai. And that led to the birth of first form of religion called as animism. Animism means belief in existence of soul in every object. तो अगर आपके सपने में podium आ रहा है, तो it's not the podium that is traveling, but the soul of the podium that is traveling to your mind. Okay, every object has a soul. अब ये काफी similar philosophy है Jainism की जैसे. Jainism also believes that every object has a soul. Okay, और soul को वो consciousness से equate करते हैं. A different kind of consciousness is there with every object. And हमारी consciousness सबसे ज्यादा high है, चेतना जिसको कहते हैं. हमारी चेतना सबसे ज्यादा high है. And relatively, other animals have relatively less consciousness, and these inanimate objects, as we say, they have soul, but with very little or no consciousness at all. And that's why it can be molded anyway. We have that critical thinking, we think accordingly. So that is animism. Every object has a unique soul of itself. How do? इसका एक कारण था that what he read travelogues का जो भी travelogues उन्होंने पढ़ा, बहुत सारे missionaries थे, बहुत सारे travelers थे. Everybody was saying that कि जो hunter gatherers हैं, जो tribes हैं living in the forest, they all used to believe in some ghosts, some spirits, and all such kind of. So belief in spirit, that's why was equated with animism, a trait of savagery society. वहीं से उन्होंने बोला कि ये feature जो होगा, ये savagery society के साथ का होगा. Okay, so that was, he suggested, was the first form of religion. Then he suggested that as the knowledge started to increase, and when people moved from hunting gathering to agriculture, तो वहां पे they started to imagine about the natural forces like rain, thunder, flood, and so on and so forth. And these natural forces became more and more important. And that's why they started to worship these natural forces in a personified form. In the form of a person, Indra Devta, or Vayu Dev, and so on and so forth. And that led to the second form of religion, that is polytheism. As we evolved from hunting gathering towards agriculture. Okay. Now, he suggested that with more development in science, the world became more and more complicated. The knowledge became more and more complex. And that's why in this complexity in the knowledge, the complexity in, say, several phenomena, actually made it difficult to attribute different features. अब जैसे कि आपको ये समझ में आने लगा कि जो विंड है दैट इज कनेक्टेड विथ से रेन, तो ये रेन और जो वायु देवता है और इंद्र देवता, ये अलग अलग कैसे हो सकते हैं? दे बोथ आर कनेक्टेड टू ईच अदर. विंड इज एक्चुअली रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर द रेनफॉल, द काइंड ऑफ रेनफॉल. मॉनसून जैसे है विंड है, तो दैट इज ब्रिंगिंग द रेनफॉल. नाउ व्हेन यू नो दिस, so how can you distinguish between vayu and indra devata when they are both connected to each other? So as the knowledge became more and more complicated, people could not fathom that there can be multiple gods who are working independent of each other. And that is why they started to believe in a singular God, that is monotheism. And that is the evolution of religion. That is animism, सबसे पहला, when people were hunter-gatherers, to polytheism, when people moved towards agriculture and they started worshipping natural forces in personified form. And the third one is monotheism. As and when the knowledge became more and more complex, they cannot distinguish between multiple gods and their zone of influence, and that's why finally monotheism. Again, यहाँ पे आपको वो bias मिलेगा. That bias is he was a Christian. He was coming from a Christian society, and Christianity is a monotheistic religion, and that's why the religion at the top or the most evolved religion will be monotheistic, while the religion which were non-monotheistic will be relatively ranked inferior. So monotheism being the symbol of civilization, and polytheism being symbol of barbaric societies, and then finally the animism being the symbol of savagery society. Yes. वो ये बोले कि जब नॉलेज, आपकी नॉलेज डेवलप हो जाएगी साइंस को लेके, तो हाउ कैन यू डिस्टिंग्विश बिटवीन टू डिफरेंट नेचुरल फोर्सेस एक्टिंग इंडिपेंडेंट ऑफ ईच अदर? कि आप कैसे बोल सकते हो कि इंद्र और वायु अलग अलग हैं? If you know that wind itself is bringing rain or carrying the moisture from a particular sea towards Indian land, how can you say that कि इंद्र और वायु अलग हैं? तो उस केस में आप इन दोनों को अलग अलग तो नहीं मांग सकते, बिकॉज दे आर बोथ कंट्रीब्यूटिंग टुवर्ड्स ईच अदर्स जॉब. व्हाट यू अज्यूम दैट कि हमारा ये अजम्पशन ही गलत था कि ये सब अलग देवता हैं. देयर इज ओनली वन सुपरनैचुरल एंटिटी व्हिच इज कंट्रोलिंग एवरीथिंग on earth, that is monotheism, one supreme god. Okay, so this is the idea of religion that was given by Tylor, in which he says that it evolves from animism to polytheism to monotheism. Okay, and next idea is evolution of language. So, in case of language, he suggested that there are certain people existing in the world which speak language they make such kind of sounds and gestures which are very much unintelligible in nature. Unintelligible means you cannot understand anything out of it. Okay, and their language is so less developed that they cannot explain even a single thing without use of gestures. Okay, तो जैसे कि इंडिया में अगर वो इंडियंस को देखेगा या हम लोग को, तो सपोज इफ समबडी आस्क्स कि सपोज आप ओआरएन में रहते हो तो अग्रवाल स्वीट्स कहाँ हैं, तो इमीडिएटली जस्ट टू एक्सप्लेन यू कुड हैव सेड दैट कि जस्ट गो 150 मीटर अहेड एंड देन टेक राइट एंड देन फाइनली सो ऑन सो फोर्थ. बट यू विल से हम लोग हमेशा ऐसे करके बात करते हैं, सीधे चले जाना, राइट ले लेना. ओके, एंड राइट जाते ही वहां पे एक टंकी आएगी या जो आएगा एंड देन वहां पे अग्रवाल स्वीट्स. Okay, that is the use of gesture in explaining very simple things also. He suggested that this use of gesture is because the vocabulary is not well developed. And that's why in order to explain very simple facets or very simple things also, you have to use gestures, because without that, the other person will not be able to comprehend what you are saying. So he suggested that in case of evolution of language, the language would have evolved in the form of gestures. That is, the most rudimentary form of language would have been gestures, hand gestures. हम लोग कुछ हाथ से कुछ बताने की कोशिश करते होंगे और डायरेक्शंस देने की और इमोशंस देने की या whatever it is. Hand gestures would have been the basic form of language, which eventually evolved to some rudimentary form of language, rudimentary form of language in the form of sounds, something like this, rudimentary sounds, okay, and which gradually developed grammar, and a complex form of language was created. Grammar and vocabulary, sorry. But every language will develop from gestures, which then will develop some kind of basic sound system, speech system, and then finally a complex form of grammar and vocabulary will come up, which will lead to evolution of language. So these are the contribution of Tylor. The society evolves from savagery, barbarism to civilization. Then, using psychic unity of mankind and survivals, he explains how evolution would have happened. Then he talks about the evolution of religion, talking that religion evolves from animism to polytheism to monotheism. Then the language evolution, that is, the beginning of language is through gestures. Okay. So please write this, and then we'll discuss the criticism of Tylor. Yes. Sorry. Uniformitarianism. So just a brief understanding, this idea was given by Charles Lyell, and it was against the biblical idea of catastrophism. So catastrophism क्या कहता है कि अर्थ में कुछ major catastrophes हुए हैं, and due to with this catastrophes or natural disasters, the previously existing species have got extinct and new species were created. Humans were the result of the last catastrophe. Okay, कोई evolution नहीं हुआ है, बस एक catastrophe में पुराने लोग मर गए. तो एक तरीके से भगवान ने प्लान बनाया अर्थ का, और जब एक प्लान अच्छा नहीं लगा तो उसको चेंज करने के लिए कैटास्ट्रॉफी आई, एंड द पीपल और स्पीशीज क्रिएटेड बाय द अर्लियर प्लान वेर एलिमिनेटेड एंड न्यू प्लान के अकॉर्डिंग नए स्पीशीज बनाए गए. तो हम लेटेस्ट प्लान के प्रोडक्ट है. ओके, दैट इज भगवान के जो सबसे लेटेस्ट सबसे बेस्ट प्लान है, दैट इज अस ह्यूमंस, एंड दैट्स व्हाई वी आर द मोस्ट सुप्रीम क्रीचर्स ऑफ गॉड. दैट इज व्हाट catastrophism believed. Lyell suggested that no, the changes in the earth that has shaped the earth cannot happen in such a short period of time. It would have taken millions of years for such changes to happen. And that's why he suggested that these forces that we see right now are occurring over the earth, or actually is faced by the earth, would have existed in the past as well. And these forces would have gradually shaped the earth. The forces like gravity, the forces like say soil erosion or river flow, or maybe tectonic movements of the plates, they were very gradual, and that would have shaped the earth over millions of years. And इसकी वजह से climate change हुआ होगा, इसकी वजह से topospheres or say some kind of physical features of the earth would have actually changed. So पहाड़ एक दिन में नहीं बना, भगवान ने नहीं बनाया, but something that would have happened because of gradual movement of the plates that we have read, folding, faulting, and all such kind of things. Now, that is what is called as uniformitarianism. अब इस आइडिया को टाइलर ने बोरो कर लिया, बोला कि यही चीज तो दिमाग के साथ भी है. So brain has a uniform pattern of thinking, and culture is a result of this gradual forces that is actually impacting the brain over thousands or millions of years ago. Since the time humans would have existed, ये forces brain पे act कर रहे हैं, और brain का सोचने का तरीका एक uniform है, एक respond करने का तरीका uniform है. So whenever there is a challenge, the brain will come up with a particular kind of solution, and that is how the culture would have evolved. The trajectory of cultural growth would have been shaped, and that is what is called as psychic unity of mankind. Human brain thinks alike, and when a particular kind of stress or problem is basically imposed upon the brain, it will come up with a particular kind of सॉल्यूशन। जैसे अर्थ पे आपने कोई फोर्स लगाया तो वो एक तरीके से बिहेव करेगा, ऐसा नहीं है कि यहाँ पे ग्रेविटी लग रही है तो अलग तरीके से बिहेव कर रहा है, कहीं और ग्रेविटेशनल फोर्स लगेगा तो अलग तरीके से। नो, ग्रेविटी जहां पे भी एक्ट करेगी द अर्थ विल बिहेव इन ए पर्टिकुलर मैनर। इन द सेम वे फोल्डिंग जहां पे भी होगी इट विल क्रिएट ए काइंड ऑफ structure like mountains. Faulting jahan pe bhi hogi, it will create a kind of depression wherever it happens. Are you getting this? In the same way, brain pe jab bhi koi particular type of stress ya challenge impose kiya jayega, it will come up with a particular kind of solution, and that is what is called as psychic unity of mankind. Okay, right? This Tylor. Right? E B Tylor is said to be E B Tylor is said to be the founding father of British anthropology. Founding father of British anthropology. In 1865, he published a book called Research into Early History of Mankind. Research into Early History of Mankind and Development of Civilization. In this book, he looked for similarities in human cultures, spread across multiple continents. He believed that these similarities is because of parallel inventions. Similarities is because of parallel inventions, which is due to like functioning of brain under like condition. Next point. In his book Primitive Culture, he aims to reconstruct history of human culture. By identifying stages. Aims to reconstruct history of human culture by identifying stages of cultural development. He defines culture as a complex whole. Culture as a complex whole, which includes knowledge, belief, art, moral, law, custom. Knowledge, belief, art, moral, law, custom, and any other capabilities, and habit, acquired by human as a member of society. Acquired by human as a member of society. Next point. Tylor crafted his reconstruction. Tylor crafted his reconstruction on three major principles. First is uniformitarianism. It's a concept given by Charles Lyell. Which says that geological processes observable today are the same processes that shaped the earth in the past. Comma, rather than some unique catastrophes. Tylor borrowed this concept and argued that culture was created by universally similar human minds. Culture was created by universally similar human minds, which is governed by same basic laws of thinking. In bracket, you can write psychic unity of mankind. Next point. Human mental processes are universal. Comma, and human societies have developed culture. Along the same trajectories. Characterized by progress. Okay. Next point. Tylor explains that similarities between cultures are pronounced. Similarities between culture So is due to parallel invention. Similarities between culture is due to parallel invention and are pronounced in the realm of technology. Are pronounced in the realm of technology. Okay. Second point, survivals. Survivals, according to Tylor, are processes, customs, opinions, carried by force of habit, into a new state of society where they are no longer relevant. However, these survivals remain as a proof. And example of the new society evolving from old one. Third, comparative method. According to Tylor, knowledge of physical laws of the world are on the whole lowest among savages, mean among barbarians, and highest among modern educated nations. Based on highest among modern educated nations, based on a society's mastery, on these laws, one can assign a relative rank. To them on an evolutionary scale. Civilization may be looked upon as general improvement of mankind. As higher organization of individuals and society, higher organization of individuals and society to promote man's goodness, to promote man's goodness, power, and happiness. Man's goodness, power, and happiness. Next point, right? Evolution of religion. Right? Tylor defined religion. Tylor defined religion as belief in supernatural being. As belief in supernatural being. According to Tylor, religion originated as belief in soul, as belief in soul. In bracket, you can write animism. Right? As per Tylor, primitive people were unable to think abstractly. Primitive people were unable to think abstractly. Hence, they were unable to comprehend events like dreams, trances. Trance is something, they say, when somebody takes psychotropic drugs, अफीम चरस वगैरह लेने के बाद, the kind of state that one's achieved, या anesthesia वगैरह लेने के बाद, that state is called as trance state. When you are not in the active consciousness, whatever you are speaking, whatever you're doing is beyond your control. Body is beyond your control, your tongue is beyond your control. That is the state of trance. And usually साधु वगैरह लोग, they usually go into that trance. आप कई सारे शिव भक्त को आपने देखा होगा, they go into the state of trance while they perform that Shiv Tandav and all. So that is the state of trance when you are not in your consciousness. And अब इसका एक negative meaning है, that's why there is a kind of smile on everybody's face. But there is another positive meaning that people who are spiritual, they associate with trance, that is that you are connected to higher reality. And that's why you are disconnected from what we call as Maya, the fake reality around us. And that is the state of trance when you are beyond your control. आप इस दुनिया से डिस्कनेक्ट होकर एक हायर रियलिटी से कनेक्ट हो जाते. So people were not able to talk about this dreams, trances, and death. Comprehend events like dreams, trances, and death. Okay, right. Next point. Speculation about these events. Made them believe in dual existence of every object. Dual existence of every object. First, physical visible body. Second, psychic invisible soul. Physical visible body, and second, psychic invisible soul. It's the soul that can leave the body that can leave the body and can travel to people's dream, can travel to people's dream. Savagery society believed that every object every object has a unique soul, has a unique soul. Okay, next point, right? As the society progressed, as the society progressed, and their knowledge and understanding of the world increased, and their knowledge and understanding of the world increased, they developed polytheistic religion. They developed polytheistic religion. People personified, people personified natural forces. People personified natural forces and worshipped them. Next one. As the societies became more complex, as a society became more complex, they were unable to comprehend, they were unable to comprehend multiple gods, multiple gods with their specific area of influence. They were unable to comprehend multiple gods with specific area of influence. Hence, they started believing in, hence they started believing in a singular, all-powerful God. A singular, all-powerful God. In bracket, monotheism. Last one, last point, evolution of language. Right? Tylor believed that language evolved from a primitive and rudimentary primitive and rudimentary form to a more sophisticated, primitive and rudimentary form to a more sophisticated system. He proposed that early humans used simple gestures, and signs, to convey meaning. Over time, they developed more complicated form of language more complicated form of language with grammar, with grammar and expanded vocabulary. Grammar and expanded vocabulary. Okay. So this is in short the contribution of Tylor. Okay. Now here just one very classic example of Indian tribes you can see जो उन्होंने animism के बारे में बताया था कि dreams and all. So Oraon community. So it's a tribe of central India. So they basically believe in animism and they have this very classic understanding of what Tylor suggested. आप वहां पे दो funeral होते हैं. Whenever somebody dies, there is two funeral there. One is called as the dry funeral, the other is called as the green funeral. तो जब किसी की डेथ हो जाती है तो the body is basically taken to an isolated shelter and kept there at least for 3 to 4 days. 3 से 4 दिन के लिए रखा जाता है. With a belief, because they have a belief that the soul might have gone for a walk and it might come and join the body again. तो इस वजह से 3-4 दिन तक उसको ड्राई फ्यूनरल कहा जाता है कि विथ ए बिलीव दैट कि सोल कहीं गया होगा टहलने, भटक गया होगा, 3-4 दिन में वापस आ जाएगा and that's how the person can get alive again. But after 3-4 days, if the person does not awakes, then they will permanently bury the person. And that is what is called as the green funeral. So that is the belief in soul and the soul leaving the body and having the power to come back to the body. Okay, ऐसी उनकी belief है. In fact, Oraons also believe that कि अगर कोई पेड़ फल देना बंद कर दे, so that means the soul of the tree has left the body of the tree. And that's why the tree is not giving the fruits. अब लेकिन the one case can be the tree gets completely dead, अब वो हमेशा के लिए सूख जाए. That means the soul has permanently left the body. The other case is the tree might be seasonal. अब हो सकता है कि अगले सीजन में वो फल दे. So they believe that the soul has again joined the body of the tree and that's why the tree has started giving the fruits. So that is the belief of animism that even the tribes living in India, they also follow to a larger extent. हम भी किसी ना किसी तरीके से animism में believe करते हैं, isn't it? We do believe in souls, spirits and all. That is the हम किसी की आत्मा की शांति के लिए बहुत सारे पाठ कराते हैं. Okay, so somehow लेकिन हमारी soul belief animism पे नहीं है. We are more polytheistic and that's why animism can be said to be a kind of survival in our religion. कि हम शायद उसी religion से आए हैं. That's why जो animistic belief अभी भी हम carry कर रहे हैं, it is not the prominent belief. The prominent belief is more like polytheism, multiple gods and all. So as per Tylor, animism will be more like a survival practice for us rather than the prominent form of religion. Are you getting this? So this is what he suggested and आपको कई सारे tribes में example देखने को मिलेंगे कि animism. Now why is it important? Right now animism, is it important? No. Or what Tylor suggested, is it important at that point of time? No. But since we are beginning a discipline, so we need to understand that how this idea actually started to develop. फिर हम जब आगे की जो philosophies पढ़ेंगे, they will be more complex and more relevant in the contemporary times. हमारी day to day life को ज़्यादा discuss करेंगे. But initially, since he was a classical scholar, so what he suggested, his focus was mainly to talk about various phenomena that we thought were divine origin, having भगवान ने बनाया है, और ये बता रहे हैं कि कैसे इंसानों ने ये सब चीजें create की होंगी. How we would have thought. क्योंकि we actually assume, जैसे एक practice है, you all know that, कि having sexual relationship with brothers and sisters is considered to be a taboo, isn't it? So incest taboo कहा जाता है. So that is, and somebody, if I get to know or you get to know that somebody is marrying his own brother or sister or having an intimate relationship with his own brother and sister, in that case, it seems like a disgusting behavior to you. Seems like, how can somebody do that, isn't it? But एक तरीका ये है कि भगवान ने ये नेचर बनाया और ये रूल बनाया हो. एक तरीका ये भी है कि शायद हम ही ने ये सोसाइटी कल्चर बनाई थी, तो हम ही ने ये रूल बनाया हो. If that would have been the case, that if we have created it, so that means at some point of time this incestuous relationship would have existed in order for us to prohibit it at some later time, isn't it? तो कभी ना कभी ऐसा भी हुआ होगा. ऐसा था, yes. So a lot of things that we take for granted were created by the humans at some point of time because of some issues or some conflicts that might have risen up. And we'll be talking about those phenomena. So religion, सबसे बड़ा phenomena जो हमारे साथ हमारे लिए सबसे central है. We basically consider that it is God created. It is the God or the messenger of the God who might have created that religion. But in reality, what Tylor and other anthropologists would suggest, it's a man-made thing. क्योंकि divine origin का idea तो हमने रेनेसां में ही reject कर दिया था. And whatever we are doing, nothing is God created, nothing. Like humans, जब आपने evolution का idea आया, तो humans have evolved from quadruped to biped. That is clear. तो उस केस में जब हमारे पास एविडेंसेस थे कि भगवान ने हमें नहीं बनाया, तो फिर बाकी थ्योरीज भी तो गलत हो गई कि भगवान ने फिर कुछ नहीं बनाया. इवन हमारे कल्चर, हमारी लैंग्वेज, हमारी सोसाइटी, वो सब कुछ हमने क्रिएट किया. एज वी स्टार्टेड टू इवॉल्व, हमारी इंटेलिजेंस बढ़ती गई, एंड दैट्स हाउ द कल्चर्स वर क्रिएटेड. एंड दैट्स व्हाई दिस थ्योरी will actually talk about the origin of several phenomena, which earlier were used to be believed that they were all divine origin. सब भगवान ने बनाया था. लेकिन जब इंसान को भगवान ने नहीं बनाया, जब उसको रिजेक्ट कर दिया हमने थ्रू एविडेंसेस, तो बाकी चीजें भी तो लॉजिकली हमने ही क्रिएट की. एंड दैट इज व्हाट evolutionism will talk about. Okay, now let's see the criticism of Tylor. Because a lot of things you must have understood, but you might not be agreeing to what Tylor had suggested. कि बोला ठीक है, समझ में तो आ रहा है उसने क्या बोला है, बट क्यों बोल दिया ये, मतलब इसका कोई सेंस नहीं बन रहा. And that is where we'll be discussing the criticism also. Yes, somebody was asking. Yes. Yes, that will be a part of criticism only. He is justifying colonization. So, one criticism, the first one is the idea of ranking. Society को rank करते ना in terms of progress, in terms of culture. ठीक है. So it's clearly possible to rank the society based on technological progress. A criteria है कि that yeah, technologically they are more developed, technologically somebody is less developed. Understood. But talking about the culture and their ranking, this is non-justified. It is more biased. And what we can say, a term called as ethnocentric. Now, what is this ethnocentric? Ethnos means people or culture. And ethnocentric means keeping one's culture always at the top and evaluating others with respect to one's own culture. अपने कल्चर को हमेशा टॉप पे रखना, और जो अपने से सिमिलर है उसको सिमिलर रैंक देना, और जो अपने से जितना ज्यादा डिफरेंट है उसको नीचे की रैंक देना, हायरार्की. And that is what is called as ethnocentric behavior. And we, some way or the other, we are ethnocentric in nature, isn't it? So for vegetarians, non-vegetarians are disgusting people. They have no heart, no kindness, no warmth, and that's why ये कैसे किसी को मार के खा सकते हैं, and that is what they think, because they believe that vegetarianism is a higher form of living, and anybody who is vegetarian is a higher form, while the non-vegetarians, they are living a lower form of living, very much equivalent to animals, and that is ethnocentric behavior. We inherently are ethnocentric, and that's the reason for communalism. Any kind of conflict, group conflict या caste conflict हो रहा है, तो दो caste में एक caste अपने आप को superior बोल रही है, दूसरे caste को inferior, and that's why the conflict. Or religious conflict, communal conflict, so Hindus and Muslims, or Muslims and Christians. What's the reason? That there is an ethnocentric behavior. Each one of them is trying to prove their superiority over the other. And how would they actually create that conflict? By making their people, mobilizing their people, saying that कि हमारा culture superior है उनसे, and that's why we need to rule over them. That is ethnocentric behavior. And that is what he was doing by ranking the culture, keeping one's own culture at the top, at the stage of civilization, and ranking others either in the stage of savagery and barbarism. And what was the reason for this? Reason is this ranking would justify colonialism. क्योंकि आपने अगर रैंक कर दिया और बोल दिया कि मेरा कल्चर सुपीरियर है, तो देन there has the justification of expansion or say imperial rule can be made. अब ये जरूरी क्यों था कॉलोनाइजेशन को जस्टिफाई करना? उसको क्या पड़ी है कि कॉलोनाइजेशन हो रहा है, जस्टिफाई करना चाहिए? व्हाट्स द रीजन फॉर इट? दो रीजन है। एक सबसे बड़ा रीजन है कि दैट यूरोप में उस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम पे एनलाइटनमेंट, ग्लोरियस रेवोल्यूशन, फ्रेंच revolution, such kind of movements were also happening. And ideologies like liberty, equality, fraternity, that is the slogan for French Revolution, was also prevailing there. अब एक तरफ वो बात कर रहे हैं लिबर्टी, इक्वालिटी, फ्रेटर्निटी की अपने ही देश में, अपने देशवासियों के बीच। ऑन द अदर हैंड दे वांटेड टू कॉन्कर द अदर पार्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड। तो ये तो कॉन्ट्रडिक्टरी हो गया कि लिबर्टी, इक्वालिटी, फ्रेटर्निटी की बात करते हैं, दैट ऑल ह्यूमंस आर इक्वल, एवरीबडी इज इक्वल, अपने वहां पे हायरार्की को चैलेंज कर रहे हैं। ऑन द अदर हैंड दे हैव टू जस्टिफाई they annexing the other part of the world, keeping them as slaves or inhuman treatments दे रहे हैं। So here the academia would help them. कैसे? By saying that these cultures are backward, these cultures are relatively backward, and that's why we ruling over them would civilize them, will actually increase their pace to move towards civilization. अगर वो 100 साल में सिविलाइजेशन की तरफ आने वाले थे, हम वो चीज 10 साल में कर सकते हैं। We will help them move towards or increase their pace towards civilization at a faster rate by ruling over them. And that's why the term white man's burden was coined. What is the idea of this white man's burden? So the African societies or the colonies, they were said to be white man's burden. That is a burden that a white man has put on himself to civilize the world. That's why they were called as white man's burden. क्यों? क्योंकि ये थ्योरी थी उसको जस्टिफाई करने के लिए दैट इनका कल्चर अनसिविलाइज्ड है, एंड सिंस देयर कल्चर वाज अनसिविलाइज्ड, सो दैट्स व्हाई वी हैव टेकन अप ऑन आवरसेल्फ, हमने ये बीड़ा उठाया कि दुनिया को सिविलाइज करेंगे। एंड कैसे सिविलाइज करेंगे? कॉलोनाइज करके। एंड इंडिया में भी वो लॉजिक लगाया गया। द ब्रिटिश रूल वाज टोल्ड एज द सेकंड आर्यन इन्वेजन ऑफ इंडिया। द फर्स्ट आर्यन इन्वेजन थ्योरी, जो आर्यन इन्वेजन आप लोगों ने एनसीईआरटी में पढ़ी होगी, एंड ब्रिटिश रूल को जस्टिफाई किया गया बोल के दैट इट इज द सेकंड आर्यन इन्वेजन, एंड द फर्स्ट आर्यन इन्वेजन ब्रॉट टू यू द वेदास, द संस्कृत एंड वेरियस अदर थिंग, द कल्चरल हेरिटेज ऑफ इंडिया, एंड द सेकंड आर्यन इन्वेजन, वी आर द ब्रिटिशर्स एंड वी आर द सेकंड आर्यंस, एंड वी विल अगेन ब्रिंग यू सिविलाइजेशन, वी विल अगेन सिविलाइज यू। दैट इज हाउ द कॉलोनाइजेशन वाज एक्चुअली जस्टिफाइड। सेकंड रीजन, अब ये जो एकेडमिक स्टडी हो रही है, उस समय ऑक्सफोर्ड कॉलेजेस हैं या जो लोग जा रहे थे ट्रैवलर्स और से मिशनरीज और सो whosoever was going to different places, who was actually funding them? Government, or say you can say this mercantilist economy. अब East India Company was actually funding so many voyages, and that's why this EICs and all, they would want कि जब कोई नया लैंड डिस्कवर हो, तो ऐसा तो है नहीं कि बस उनको ज्योग्राफी की बुक लिखनी थी इस वजह से उन्होंने वॉयेज करा दिया कि everybody was a geographer there and he wanted to be known as an author, not for the sake of knowledge. वो तो it was on the pretext of knowledge gathering उनको फंड किया गया, but reality तो यही थी कि that they wanted to discover the areas where resources are available, and उस एरिया में रिसोर्स अवेलेबल हो तो पहले उनको फंड किया। अब जिन्होंने इनको फंड किया है स्टडी करने के लिए, तो दे विल डेफिनेटली क्रिएट ए थ्योरी दैट वुड सपोर्ट देम, तभी तो फंडिंग आएगी। नहीं तो अगर उनके खिलाफ, अपने मालिक के खिलाफ बोलेंगे, तो हु विल फंड देयर प्रोजेक्ट्स, हु विल फंड देयर स्टडीज, and that's why they cannot say anything against them, and that's why they were creating the theories that would support their intentions. And that's why this idea of ranking the cultures was ethnocentric and was mainly done to justify colonization. Okay, so one basic, अब आपको ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी के बारे में बताता हूं कि बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग सा केस है। आपको पता है व्हेन ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी came to India, and when Battle of Plassey happened and it won over that, and Battle of Buxar later on, so उनके पास कितनी आर्मी स्ट्रेंथ थी? सॉरी, वो तो 7,000 आप उसकी बात कर रहे हो कि ब्रिटिशर्स कितने थे? ओके, एक्चुअल आर्मी स्ट्रेंथ व्हेन ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी वाज एट इट्स पीक, मतलब मैं ये नहीं कह रहा कि सिर्फ ब्रिटिशर्स या इंडियंस, ओवरऑल कितने लोग ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी में एज ए सोल्जर काम कर रहे थे? इट कैन बी इंडियंस ऑल्सो. So they were commanding approximately 2,29,000 people, and their army was more than the British army. British government की आर्मी से भी बड़ी आर्मी थी उनकी. It was more a significant power than entire British government, और से ब्रिटेन का जो पूरी गवर्नमेंट उससे ज्यादा कहीं बड़ी आर्मी थी. And that's why that's why this rule, initially rule, is called as imperialization. Imperials means some private entities would be trying to conquer over the world. धीरे धीरे ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी का नेशनलाइजेशन हो जाता है, एंड देन द पावर वाज ट्रांसफर्ड फ्रॉम ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी टू ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट, राइट? सो या जिसको कह सकते हैं क्वींस प्रोक्लेमेशन हैपेंड, एंड द पावर वाज ट्रांसफर्ड फ्रॉम ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी टू द मोनार्क, एंड दैट्स हाउ दिस. But एक point of time था that they were commanding more power, more authority than the entire country that they were a part of. And that's why this term is called as imperialism and later on colonization. अब आप समझो कि आज के टाइम पे भी कुछ ऐसा हो रहा है. Like एक कंपनी है, you must have heard about it, Blackstone. और एप्पल की बात करते हैं, एप्पल तो सबने सुना होगा, ब्लैकस्टोन नहीं भी सुना हो. So Apple has a market capitalization of more than 5 to 7 trillion dollar. Okay, or maybe 3 trillion dollar, ऐसे कुछ के आसपास का उसका मार्केट कैपिटलाइजेशन है. Now, अगर if it is ranked according to the country's GDP, so it would come one among the top 10 economies of the world. Okay, and plus the kind of supply chain that they control, the kind of families that they control, the kind of networks that they have built, they basically have a big power to control the world. और ऐसे Blackstone वो तो approximately 10 to 11 trillion dollar के आसपास मैनेज कर रही है. That is the amount of wealth that they control. Hedge fund company है, and they have kind of shareholding in almost every big companies of the world. And अगर वो थोड़ा सा कुछ बिलियन डॉलर्स एक दिन में इंडिया से मूव करे कभी भी, तो then the entire economy of India will actually lead to, or will actually experience a big collapse. And that's why every government is actually trying to make sure to have a cordial contact with this kind of companies. And that is the time, this is which is called as neo-imperialism. Jaise East India Company was actually having a lot of power. Now the power is not in the form of military strength that they have, but the power is in the form of economic strength that they possess, and that is what is called as neo-imperialism. तो कभी भी वो चाहे तो इंडिया की इकोनॉमी को शेक कर सकते हैं, द पावर, और जैसे ही इकोनॉमी शेक होगी द गवर्नमेंट विल एक्चुअली सफर ए जिटर, एंड इट हैज टू, और कई बार गवर्नमेंट कोलैप्स कर जाती है. सो एंटायर दिस सीरियन सिविल वॉर और ईरानियन सिविल वॉर, ये सब यही सब कर रहे हैं. ऑयल के प्राइसेस बढ़ा देंगे, ऑयल के प्राइसेस एकदम गिरा देंगे, एंड द इकोनॉमी सफर्स अ लॉस, बहुत भयंकर लॉस होता है, एंड द गवर्नमेंट चेंजेस, गवर्नमेंट कोलैप्स हो जाती है, and somebody else who is actually in favor of them will be placed at that position. Okay, so academia, what I wanted to say, is always connected to the geopolitics. What kind of theories, what kind of narratives are coming up, it cannot be dissociated from this geopolitics. क्योंकि ultimately fund कौन कर रहा है academia को? How Oxford universities are able to conduct that research? कौन करता है? ऑक्सफोर्ड के पास फीस से थोड़ी ना इतने पैसे आ रहे, इतने स्कॉलरशिप्स देते हैं वो. सो हर कैपिटलिस्ट ग्रुप जो है, they basically have some kind of trust, and through which they are actually funding this Oxford, Cambridge, so big universities are Ivy League universities, and that's why the academia जो भी idea आएगा, that has to be in favor of the capitalists who actually fund them. Okay, so this is the first case, the ranking. Just write this, just a simple statement, just write ranking of society and culture ranking of society and culture is tainted or is colored by prejudices. is tainted by prejudices, it reflects it reflects the ethnocentric attitude, reflects the ethnocentric attitude and behavior of the scholar. Ethnocentric attitude and behavior of the scholar. Okay. Second thing, he suggested that with accumulation of knowledge, progress will come and it will eventually lead to happiness, power, and goodness. That is what he suggested: more happiness, more power, more goodness. But several events that have happened in the past few decades, starting from First World War to Second World War, atomic bombs ka drop kar dena, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and then Vietnam War, Cold War that is happening, and the nuclearization of the entire world, or then this COVID, and then several other phenomena which are so violent, so brutal, and even the countries like legitimate forces, they are using the power to dehumanize the condition of humans. मतलब इतनी brutal तरीके से humans को मारा जा रहा है. Like you must have heard about this Holocaust. Okay, that is when the Jews were actually sent to the gas chamber. So this technology, has it given us all power, all happiness, and all goodness? So is it all progressive? In fact, हम लोग ये बात कर रहे थे कि जंगल में रहने वाले, they are thinking about the next day meal and so on. This is completely a false perception. आप एक टेस्ट किया गया, एक स्टडी की गई among the tribes living in the forest, say pygmies living in the forest and living a life of hunting gathering, and compared to the person who is like working in a 9 to 5 job. The dopamine level of the tribes, that is a symbol of happiness, that was very high as compared to the dopamine levels of yourself, or say the people working in the industrialized economy. Because they do not have to worry about Sharma ji ka beta 10th mein kitne number le aayega. And 10th, 12th, then graduation, and then UPSC, and then UPSC ke baad it will not end. Okay, then there will be concern for cadre, then service allocation, and then finally cadre ke baad promotion, and so on and so forth. So every next day there is some other kind of challenge that you will be putting up. So this is what is called as existentialism. मतलब कि हम लोग अपने लिए एक पहाड़ बनाते हैं खुद के लिए, और उस पहाड़ को कॉन्कर करने का अपने आप को चैलेंज देते हैं. And when we conquer that पहाड़, that mountain, we again create another पहाड़. कि अभी पहला कॉन्कर क्या करा कि पापा ने पहले बोला होगा, मम्मी ने, कि 10th पास कर लो बढ़िया नंबर से, उसके बाद तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं आती. And we believed in it कि ये एक पहाड़ है, और 10th में 95%, 96% लेके आए. फिर पेरेंट्स ने बोला कि नहीं 12th कर लो यार, 12th बढ़िया से हो जाए, फिर कोई दिक्कत नहीं आती. एंड यू बिलीव्ड इन इट, 12th भी हो गया. फिर ग्रेजुएशन मिली, ग्रेजुएशन में बोला IIT IIM या कुछ, सॉरी IIT मिल जाए, नीट में कोई अच्छा कॉलेज मिल जाए, जिंदगी एकदम बढ़िया हो जाती है. तो चलो वो भी हो गया, लेकिन उसके बाद भी एक अच्छी जॉब मिल जाए तो और अच्छी बात है. एंड देन वो भी होने के बाद सब कुछ छोड़ छाड़ के UPSC में आ गए. अब उसमें भी ये है कि IAS बनना है, IAS बन जाए तो आगे फिर देन देयर इज ए कोट एवरीबॉडी मस्ट हैव हर्ड कि एक बार आप IAS बन जाओ तो 7 पुश्तें खाती, isn't it? 7 generations would live in happiness, that the power, the aura that you will create. Now that is every time we are giving a challenge to ourselves and then trying to conquer over it, and that's why we are living a life of ultimate stress हमेशा. But उनके लिए क्या challenge है? The ones who are living in the forest, they are spending maximum time of their day in leisure activities. Getting up in the morning, going for 2 hours of hunting, and then they are done for the day. Okay, bringing the meat back, getting it cooked, singing, dancing, consuming liquor, enjoying, and then sleeping. And hunting is more like a game or more like an exercise to them. It's more like a group activity to them. Okay, कोई स्ट्रेस नहीं कि 10th पास करना है, 12th पास करना है, IIM IIT में जाना है, and so on and so forth. And that's why dopamine level is very high in their body. And he is saying that कि progress से happiness आएगी, goodness आएगी, power आएगा. We are more powerless right now because we are more concerned about our future. They are not concerned. They have whole of the forest for them. ठीक है, तो इतना तो खाना मिल ही जाएगा कि मैं भूखा नहीं सोऊंगा. But we basically are continuously bothered about that कि अपने परिवार को कैसे पालेंगे. So more stress, more conflict, more tension, more threat to survival compared to the people living there. So that is also a false idea. Moreover, the several violent activities that we have actually experienced because of our actions, it's also not showing that with progress will come happiness, goodness, or say more organized form of life. Disrupted life hai. So that also is a flawed concept. In scientific knowledge से सब कुछ अच्छा हो जाएगा, सब कुछ बेहतर हो जाएगा, ऐसा नहीं. साइंटिफिक नॉलेज आ गई और देखो एसी चलाते चलाते आज का टाइम ऐसा आ गया कि नॉर्मल एसी काम ही नहीं कर रहे. ओके, so the kind of temperature there is 47 degree, 48 degree, that these ACs are becoming dysfunctional. Okay, and it is only a matter of 10-15 years only. That 10 years back, 15 years back, air condition was more like a privilege. Most of us come from a household जहाँ पे air condition was literally considered to be a privilege when you were children. And not everybody had that facility of air condition in their houses. And काम चलता भी था. We were happy. Most of us or some of us have also experienced a time that during the time of summer, we used to go on the terrace and used to sleep over there. That was also a time. But right now, we cannot imagine it. So has technology brought us happiness? No. Has technology brought us goodness, power? No. Okay. It has, in fact, deteriorated our condition in a lot of mechanisms. Okay. So this is what the criticism is. Just write this. The violent events of past century make it difficult to assume that modern educated nations successfully promote humanity's goodness, power, and happiness. Humanity's goodness, power, and happiness. The cultural changes may not always be progressive. The cultural changes may not always be progressive in nature. Okay. The third one is he's saying that कि culture progress करता रहेगा हमेशा और culture changes progressive होते जाएंगे. But how to explain the end of civilizations like Indus Valley civilization, Mesopotamian civilization, Mayan civilization, Amazon civilization, ऐसे बहुत सारी civilizations exist करती थी. They actually collapsed, they ended all of a sudden. How to explain it? कि civilization के बाद degeneration कैसे हुआ? Yeah. So the idea that evolution is always unilinear, it is wrong because there can be degeneration as well. That is, civilization can collapse. Indus Valley civilization collapsed, Mesopotamian collapsed, Mayan civilization collapsed. So the idea of unilinear evolution is flawed. That's right. Tylor's idea of evolution happening in a unilinear fashion, ignores or overlooks degeneration events. Which may lead to end of civilizations. It may lead to end of civilizations. Now, another one is a criticism of conjectural history. Conjectural means assumed history. ये मन की बात है. Okay, so don't take it otherwise. मन की बात. So मन की बात as if कि उस स्कॉलर के मन में आया और उसने बोला कि पास्ट में सैवेज फिलोसोफर रहे होंगे, उन्होंने ऐसा किया होगा एंड ये एनिमिज्म का आइडिया आ गया. ओके, सो व्हाट्स द प्रूफ ऑफ दिस? इज देयर एनी रिटन एविडेंस दैट यू हैव गॉट कि ऐसा लोगों ने सोचा होगा? और इज देयर एनी काइंड ऑफ एविडेंस दैट यू हैव दैट इज actually suggesting that people would have thought like this and that would have led to the birth of animism? What's the proof of it? सुनने में तो बहुत अच्छा लगता है क्योंकि मन की बात है. Okay, but reality में how credential it is, how valid it is, there is no proof for it. And that's why this entire theory, the version of Tylor specifically, is rejected because of use of conjectural history, because there is no proof of it. Right? That's right. The entire theory is based on conjectural history without any valid proof. Conjectural history without any valid proof. And why this conjectural history? A reason for depending upon this conjectural history is what is called as armchair anthropology. Armchair anthropology का मतलब क्या है कि अपने कमरे में बैठ के दूसरों के सोर्सेस को पढ़ पढ़ के उन्होंने एक थियरी दे दी. एंड आई हैव टोल्ड यू दैट ट्रैवलॉग्स जब लिखे जा रहे थे उस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम पे पीपल वेयर एग्जैजरेटिंग व्हाट दे वर एक्सपीरियंसिंग. दे वर ट्राइंग टू सेंसेशनलाइज कि गए थे तो 8 फुट का आदमी दिखा और उसके 10-10 हाथ थे और पता नहीं कैसे कैसे उसके इतना बड़ा कान था, हाथी जितना कान था, एंड सो ऑन सो फोर्थ. And that is, they were creating vivid imaginations of people living in some other faraway land, behaving and appearing in a very different manner as compared to the humans of Europe. Okay. And these kind of travelogues were the foundation of what Tylor suggested. Tylor ने एक मेक्सिको को छोड़ के पूरी दुनिया में कहीं ट्रैवल नहीं किया कि देखने के लिए कि बाकी सोसाइटीज, बाकी ट्राइब्स कैसे हैं. He did not do any kind of what is called as field work. That means directly interacting with the community about whom you are writing. And all of his work was basically based on second-hand information of travelers or accounts of travelers or missionaries or officers of different parts of the world, which cannot be said to be credential. So ये armchair anthropology है, and that's why you just cannot trust what he suggested. Okay, just write the heading armchair anthropology. Yes, you are right. During my masters, I happened to visit Amarkantak. Okay. So Amarkantak में वहाँ पे इंदिरा गांधी नेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ ट्राइब्स है, एंड वहाँ पे अमरकंटक के जंगलों में कम्युनिटीज, ट्राइबल कम्युनिटीज रहती हैं. Now this tribal community, they living in the forest, they actually know more than 500 different types of trees. 500 अलग-अलग पौधों, पेड़ को वो पहचानते हैं नाम से. And not just this, these 500 trees, they actually know the properties of the leaves of these trees, या bark, और किसका छाल उतारनी है और किस तरीके से यूज कर सकते हैं. So they know that which trees leaves are salty. They burn it and the ashes of that leaf is used to add salt. They do not have that processed salt, टाटा नमक. So they just know the tree leaf, उसको जलाना है और वो salty हो जाएगा. They know, जैसे आप लोग आपने सुना होगा this stevia. सो स्टीविया इज ए वेरी फेमस आर्टिफिशियल स्वीटनर जो अभी आ रहा है, प्लांट बेस्ड स्टीविया एक प्लांट है. नाउ हाउ डू वी नो दैट स्टीविया लीव्स आर स्वीट? बेसिकली ये ट्राइबल नॉलेज है. दे यूज टू यूज दिस काइंड ऑफ लीव्स फॉर एज ए काइंड ऑफ स्वीटनर देयर. उनको ये पता है कि कौन सा सांप काटता है तो कौन से पेड़ के छाल को लगाना है जिससे वो सांप के काटने पे रिलीफ हो सके. दे हैव the medicines related to overflow of blood during menstruation that will constrict the uterus, जिससे overflow of blood can be stopped. So a lot of medicines that they are using, that is based on the local herbs and trees that was actually that is known to them. In fact आप देखोगे कि एक 2018-17 एग्जैक्टली ईयर तो मुझे याद नहीं, एक ट्राइबल हीलर को पद्मश्री मिला था. द नेम ऑफ द हीलर इज लक्ष्मी कुट्टी. शी इज फ्रॉम केरला एंड शी एक्चुअली, वहां उसके पास दूर दूर से लोग आते हैं इलाज कराने के लिए अबाउट सेवरल ट्रीटमेंट्स जो एलोपैथिक नहीं कर पाते. एंड शी इज एक्चुअली यूजिंग द लोकल हर्ब्स अवेलेबल इन द एरिया दैट शी लिव्स. शी इज ए ट्राइब एंड ट्राइबल हीलर है. एंड उनको पद्मश्री इसीलिए मिला बिकॉज ऑफ यूजिंग दैट ट्रेडिशनल नॉलेज टू हील द पीपल. And she is preparing medicines out of the herbs that are available in the local environment. And after she got Padma Shri, Kerala government actually has started officially documenting her knowledge, so that क्योंकि इनको जो knowledge मिली वो orally transfer हुई इनके parents से, and so on so forth. Whatever she has learned it from her parents orally. अब ये अगर ये knowledge document नहीं की गई तो after her death that knowledge will also disappear. That will end. So yes, what you're saying is correct कि जरूरी नहीं कि savage हैं तो उनके पास knowledge की कमी है, but वो knowledge उस particular context में survive करने के लिए सबसे बेहतर है. शायद हमारी जो knowledge है अगर हमें जंगल में छोड़ दिया जाए 2 दिन तक survive नहीं कर पाएंगे, but they have better knowledge to survive in the environment in which they are living, right? And that's why they are more relevant there. And हमारी जो अब उनको शहर में लाया जाए तो शायद वो survive ना कर पाए, और हमें जंगल में छोड़ा जाए तो हम survive नहीं कर पाए. Okay, so उनकी knowledge उस एरिया में सर्वाइव करने के लिए बेटर है, हमारी नॉलेज जिस एरिया में हम रह रहे हैं वहां पे सर्वाइव करने के लिए बेटर है. ओके आपने एग्जांपल दिया तो वो तो एक नॉलेज है, ट्रेडिशनल नॉलेज, उससे अपन उसको एक्सेप्टेंस दे रहे हैं क्योंकि उनका जो डोमेन है उसमें वो अच्छे हैं, या फिर हमारा जो डोमेन है हम उसमें नॉलेजेबल है. तो आइडिया ऑफ प्रोग्रेस क्या है, आइडिया ऑफ सिविलाइजेशन क्या है? आइडिया यही तो सब्जेक्टिविटी है, यही तो आपको समझना है. एट द एंड ऑफ दिस कोर्स यू विल अंडरस्टैंड दैट प्रोग्रेस जो हम समझते हैं अब या जब तक समझते आए हैं वो शायद वो प्रोग्रेस नहीं है. प्रोग्रेस इज समथिंग, if I say that everybody has equal right, equal opportunity, equal amount of happiness, equal liberty to express himself or herself, that is progress. अब वो जैसे रहना चाहे वो रह सके, okay, अपने कल्चर के साथ, अपने हेरिटेज के साथ, and not being judged for that. That is progress, I believe. मतलब that is subjective, and that's why its definition will vary from person to person. आपके लिए शायद प्रोग्रेस होगा कि मेरे पास बहुत सारा पैसा हो जाए, बहुत सारी गाड़ियां हो, घर हो, पर एक ट्राइब को अगर आपने जंगल से उठा के यहाँ पे चाणक्यपुरी में बहुत आलीशान घर या एकदम पैलेशियल हाउस विला दे दिया तो ही विल फील लाइक आई हैव बीन पुट इनटू अ ट्रैप, ए जेल, बिकॉज अर्लियर आई वाज हैविंग द एंटायर फॉरेस्ट ऑफ माइन एंड नाउ आई एम ट्रैप्ड इन सम फ्यू थाउजेंड स्क्वायर फीट्स. तो उसके लिए तो वो जेल है, तो उसके लिए वो प्रोग्रेस नहीं है, राइट? सो द डेफिनेशन ऑफ प्रोग्रेस विल वेरी फ्रॉम पर्सन टू पर्सन, एंड एज लॉन्ग एज वी स्टार्ट एक्नॉलेजिंग कि हर किसी की प्रोग्रेस का नजरिया अलग है, एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम वी विल डेफिनेटली देन बी कॉल्ड एज अ डेवलप्ड नेशन, जहां पे ये विजन होगा. साइंटिफिक टेम्पर, ओके, इसके ऊपर थोड़ा सा अगर आप वेट करो तो द लास्ट थ्योरी दैट विल टॉक अबाउट पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म वो साइंटिफिक टेम्पर को भी खत्म कर देगी कि साइंस इज नॉट अ साइंस. ओके, जिसको हम साइंस बोल रहे हैं, इट इज द ओपिनियंस ऑफ द डोमिनेंट सेक्शंस ऑफ द सोसाइटी, वही कंट्रोल करते हैं. फॉर एनीथिंग टू बी साइंटिफिक इट हैज टू कम फ्रॉम वेस्ट, वाइट एंड सम हायर यूनिवर्सिटीज देयर. ओके, कोई भी चीज साइंटिफिक तभी मानी जाएगी जब वो कोई वेस्टर्न कंट्री से आ रही है, अमेरिका, ब्रिटेन, जर्मनी, फ्रांस, तो हम कोट करते हैं कि देखो अमेरिका के साइंटिस्ट ने बोला है, ठीक है। वाइड आवर पीपल, आप देखा होगा कि सुधांशु त्रिवेदी हमेशा अपने वेद के कुछ इवेंट्स को जस्टिफाई करने के लिए नासा को कोट करते हैं। व्हाई डू वी नीड द अफर्मेशन ऑफ नासा टू से दैट वी वर राइट एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम? इसरो का कंफर्मेशन सही क्यों नहीं हो सकता? So that means there is a hierarchy in science also. For anything to be scientific, it has got to come from Western people, white people, or usually male, and from a very Ivy League college, Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, और से बॉस्टन, इस तरीके के कॉलेजेस से, कैलिफोर्निया इंस्टीट्यूशन से आना चाहिए, कुछ ऐसा होना चाहिए, तभी तो उसको मानेंगे। अभी कोई जैसे कि सपोज करो, आप देखो कोविड का टाइम बहुत क्लासिक एग्जांपल है। कोविड में अमेरिकन साइंटिस्ट जो दे वर सजेस्टिंग कि ये दवाई यूज करो, और इंडिया में उसकी शॉर्टेज हो जा रही थी, डिस्पाइट इंडिया बीइंग ए प्रोड्यूसर ऑफ ड्रग्स। हम एक्सपोर्ट कर रहे थे, लेकिन इंडिया में स्टेरॉइड्स की शॉर्टेज हो गई, ओके। एंड और हमने कभी क्वेश्चन नहीं किया। बाद में उन्होंने पहले एक दवाई बताई, क्विनोक्रीन काम कर रही है, तो सबने खरीदना शुरू कर दिया, सबने स्टॉक करना शुरू कर दिया, और उसकी शॉर्टेज हो गई। फिर बाद में कोई स्टेरॉइड बताया, कुछ बताया, एंड पीपल वेर स्टार्टेड टू लाइक अमासिंग इट, एंड बाद में बोला कि इसका कोई फायदा नहीं हो रहा। इनफैक्ट जिसने स्टेरॉइड लिया उसकी डेथ हो गई, और जिसको किसी अनअवेलेबिलिटी की वजह से स्टेरॉइड नहीं मिला वो बच गया। ओके, दैट इज व्हाट हैपेंड ड्यूरिंग द सेकंड वेव ऑफ कोविड। एंड देन देयर वाज वन इंडियन पर्सन who actually came up with a drug, Coronil. The entire world, okay, I'm not saying whether he was right or wrong, but the amount of criticism that he faced for that drug, वो बाकी जितने ड्रग्स हैं उससे ज्यादा ट्रायल करके आया था, कम से कम, ठीक है। लेकिन उसको जितनी क्रिटिसिज्म मिली उतनी तो यूएस वालों को नहीं मिली। तो दैट मीन्स देयर इज ए हायरार्की ऑफ साइंसेस। कौन ये बात बोलेगा वो डिपेंड करता है कि उसको कितनी वैल्यू दी जाएगी। So it has to come from West, white, and some elite university there. India से आएगी तो नहीं बोला जाएगा। Okay. So science is also not science because science also has subjectivity, opinions, hierarchy. कहाँ से opinion आ रहा है? Okay. तो objective तो वो भी नहीं है। Okay. So what? Where I was? मैं dictate कर रहा था कुछ? Armchair anthropology. Just right. Tylor's opinions were based on secondary sources of information like travelers and missionaries accounts. Travelers and missionaries. Missionaries means जो priests वगैरह जाते थे चर्च के, just to convert them. Missionaries account. These sources had no credibility. And last criticism. So he overlooked a very significant force of cultural change, that is diffusion. So cultural change invention से भी हो सकता है, but cultural change could also happen because of passing of the traits. Cultural traits एक दूसरे से copy किए जा रहे हैं. So that he ignored. He did not talk about it. So just write this. Tylor ignored or overlooked a significant force for cultural change. Ignored or overlooked significant force of cultural change. That is diffusion. Okay. So last heading, right? Conclusion. Right? Tylor shaped development of anthropology as a field of inquiry. Development of anthropology as a field of inquiry. His definition of culture. His definition of culture is the most appreciated contribution. Is the most appreciated contribution towards anthropology. By defining cultural dimension of human existence, by defining cultural dimension of human existence, Tylor created anthropology. Tylor created anthropology as a science of humans. Tylor created anthropology as a science of humans. Now, why I'm giving this conclusion? It's not that you have to remember this verbatimly, but एक template की तरह काम करता है. Okay, just to give you an idea that how conclusion should be while writing about any particular scholar, कि इस तरीके से end में आप उसको criticize करने के बाद थोड़ी सी बड़ाई कर दो कि भाई बुरा ना माने. अगर उसकी आत्मा ऊपर से देख रही हो तो ऐसा ना कि पूरा झंड कर दिया मेरी. So that is how these are just the templates. You don't have to remember it verbatimly. Okay, just have an idea that these can be used. Or कई बार what I used to do in my paper was like remember दो तीन templates and using this templates for any of the scholar because theory के तो सवाल एक दो ही आएंगे. Okay, so you just remember one or two templates and whenever required you can just switch the name of the scholar and use that same template for multiple scholars. Okay, because एक दो ही सवाल आएंगे at max in the paper. Okay, so this is all about Tylor and the contribution of Tylor. We'll be talking about the scholar L.H. Morgan in the next class. So that's it for today. Thank you so much. See you tomorrow.